Temporal scope and key theories in global economic history. Introduction. Global economic history examines the evolution of economies, from ancient times to the modern era, focusing on patterns of growth, trade, technological innovation, and institutional change. By analyzing economic transformations over time, scholars aim to understand the causes of economic divergence, the impact of globalization, and the role of institutions in economic development. This document explores the temporal scope chronological framework of global economic history and the key theories that help explain historical economic changes. Temporal scope of global economic history. The study of global economic history covers thousands of years, from prehistoric economies to the present day. Scholars often divide it into distinct periods based on economic structures, technological advancements, and major historical turning points. 1. Prehistoric and early agrarian economies, pre-10,000 BCE, 3000 BCE. Early human societies were based on hunter-gatherer economies with small-scale trade and resource sharing. The Neolithic Revolution c. 10,000 BCE marked the transition to agriculture, enabling population growth and the rise of permanent settlements. Key developments: domestication of plants and animals, emergence of barter systems and early trade routes, development of rudimentary property rights and social hierarchies. 2. Ancient and classical economies, 3000 BCE, 500 CE. Early civilizations such as Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China developed state-controlled economies with taxation, trade regulations, and currency systems. The Mediterranean economies, Greece and Rome, were characterized by a mix of agriculture, slavery-based labor systems, and extensive trade networks. Key developments: emergence of money and formalized trade, expansion of long-distance trade, Silk Road, Indian Ocean trade, state-controlled economic policies, e.g. Roman grain subsidies. 3. Medieval and feudal economies, 500 CE, 1500 CE. Feudalism dominated Europe, with economies centered around manorialism, land-based production, and limited urban markets. The Islamic Golden Age, 8th and 14th centuries, fostered commercial expansion, banking innovations, and knowledge transfer. Key developments: rise of merchant guilds and early banking systems, growth of trade hubs Venice, Constantinople, Timbuktu, impact of the Black Death, 14th century, on labor markets and wages. 4. Early modern mercantilist and colonial economies, 1500 CE, 1800 CE. Mercantilism, state-controlled trade, and protectionist policies dominated European economic policies. European powers established colonial economies, extracting resources and forcing global trade dependencies. Key developments: transatlantic slave trade and plantation economies, rise of stock markets and joint stock companies, e.g. Dutch East India Company, early industrialization and mechanization. 5. The Industrial Revolution and capitalist expansion, 1800 CE, 1914 CE. The Industrial Revolution, 1750-1850, triggered economic transformation, marked by factory production, technological advances, and urbanization. Capitalist economies expanded with free markets, wage labor, and mass production. Key developments: growth of railroads, steam engines, and mechanized industries, gold standard and expansion of global financial markets, increasing economic inequalities between industrialized and non-industrialized regions. 6. The 20th century, global conflicts and economic transformations. 1914-2006. 2 World Wars and the Great Depression, 1929. Disrupted global economies, leading to government intervention in markets. The Bretton Woods System, 1944, established a framework for international trade and finance. The Cold War, 1947-1991, created competing economic systems, capitalist U.S. led versus communist Soviet-led, Key developments: Keynesian economics and government-led economic policies, post-WE economic boom, and the rise of multinational corporations. Economic liberalization, 1970s, 2000s, with neoliberalism and globalization. 7. The 21st century digital economy and globalization, 2000 CE present. The digital revolution has reshaped global economies, shifting towards automation, AI, and financial technology. Global trade networks are increasingly interconnected, with supply chains stretching across continents. Key developments: growth of China and emerging economies as major global players. Economic challenges such as climate change, wealth inequality, and financial crises. The rise of cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. B. Key theories in global economic history. Scholars use various theories to explain economic transformations over time. 1. Classical economic theories. Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations, 1796. Advocated for free markets, division of labor, and trade liberalization. David Ricardo, Comparative Advantage, 1817. Explained how trade benefits nations by specializing in efficient production. Strengths explains market-driven growth. Limitations overlooks institutional and technological constraints. 2. Marxist economic theory. Karl Marx, Das Kapital, 1867, proposed that economic systems evolve through class struggles, transitioning from feudalism to capitalism and ultimately socialism. Dependency theory, 20th century, suggested that wealthy nations exploit poorer ones through unequal trade. Strengths highlights power dynamics and exploitation in economic history. Limitations predicts an inevitable collapse of capitalism, which has not occurred. 3. New institutional economics. Douglas North emphasized that property rights, governance, and institutions determine economic success or failure. Acemoglu and Robinson, Why Nations Fail, 2012. Distinguished between inclusive institutions, fostering growth, and extractive institutions, hindering development. Strengths explains long-term economic divergence. Limitations, difficult to quantify institutional effects precisely. 4. World systems theory. Immanuel Wallerstein proposed that global economies are structured into core, semi-periphery, and periphery nations, where the core dominates trade and industry. Strengths useful for studying colonialism, globalization, and economic dependencies. Limitations oversimplifies complex economic relationships. 5. Schumpeterian innovation theory. Joseph Schumpeter, Creative Destruction, argued that innovation disrupts old industries and drives economic progress. Strengths explains technological revolutions. Limitations does not fully account for institutional barriers to innovation. 6. Keynesian and neoliberal economic theories. John Maynard Keynes, General Theory, 1936, advocated for government intervention in markets during recessions. Milton Friedman and neoliberalism, 1970s-2000s, promoted deregulation, free markets, and privatization. Strengths explains economic cycles and policy responses. Limitations: neoliberalism led to financial crises and inequality. Conclusion: the temporal scope of global economic history spans from prehistoric trade to the modern digital economy, while key theories help explain economic growth, crises, and global inequalities. By integrating classical economics, institutional analysis, technological innovation, and globalization theories, scholars gain a deeper understanding of the forces shaping economies over time. Would you like me to expand on any specific histo?